In this video, I'm going to demonstrate several different caching techniques as explained in the article Caching with ASP.NET found on 4guysfromrolla.com. Specifically, I'm going to talk about page-level caching, show you a quick example of that, show how to modify that by setting the vary by param and what does that mean. Also, I'll demonstrate the fragment caching by building a user control and caching that. And then also we'll demonstrate data caching by pulling information from an XML file, and whenever that underlying XML file changes, the cache will reload. So the first thing I want to demonstrate is simple page-level caching. And what I did to demonstrate this was basically in Visual Studio.NET, I created a new web form called simple.aspx, and I simply added a label control and a button. And then in the code behind what I did was actually whenever you click the button that it would set the label one.text equal to now.toString. So it will take whatever the value of now is, the system clock, and it will convert it to a string and place it in the label. Now, the most important thing about this, however, is found on the Designer Services HTML view. You'll notice that I added the following line of code here. Output cache, duration equals 10, and for our example here, vary by param equals none. This is important because this directive tells the ASP.NET HTTP handler that it should cache the output for a duration of 10 seconds. So let's save this. Let's build our example. To make sure, I'm going to set the start page, and then I'm going to click Run. And after just a moment, a browser will appear with our example. Let me pull it here into sight. I'm going to click our button, and we'll notice that it comes up, and really the key here is 13 seconds. I'm going to click it again, and click it again, and click it again. And after 10 seconds have expired, or close to 10 seconds, we'll notice that the value changed to 24. And we can click that again. So you get the idea that it changes to 35. So that's a quick example of setting a simple output cache on your web page. In the next example, I want to modify what we did just a moment ago. And you can see in the vary by param, the only thing that I really changed here is that in the output cache, changed the duration to 30, and then also changed the vary by parameter to a value called part number. If you recall from the article, the vary by param allows you to change the conditions by which the cache is reloaded. It can either be reloaded after 30 seconds, or it can be reloaded whenever part number changes. You can also change this to star, which means if any field were to change, then you can also refresh the cache. So we're going to demonstrate the difference between the two. I'm going to type back in part number, save it, build our solution. And then I also want to make sure that this is the start page. I'm going to select Run. In just a moment, our browser appears. Okay. Now, the most important thing about this example is the actual use of the query string. What I'm going to do is change the query string to say part number equals 5. And when I do, you'll notice that the time changed here, and then also you'll notice that we have the ID set here. Now, if I refresh, and I continue to refresh while part number equals 5, notice that the value and the time stay the same. But the moment I change this value to 6, notice that the time changed as well as the value here. That's because we set the vary by param equal to the part number. Now, what if I were to change and add an additional value here to the end of the string. I'm going to add, let's call it description equals Bob. And when I do, notice that, and I'll change this now to Jim. And I'll change this to Steve. That even though the description parameter changes, that the time does not change, because the only thing that affects the changing of the cache is actually this part number value. We'll change this now to 8, and notice that it does change. The next example involves fragment caching. If you recall from the article, fragment caching allows you to save off sections of web pages into a cache without having to save the entire web page. And the way that you accomplish this is through the use of user controls. So we have a very simple page called fragment, and here in this page I have not set any page level output caching directives. But I simply have a label, and on the page load I'll take and place the date time stamp now into the label1.txt label. But I want to also show you a control that I built, which is very simple, called cache.time.ascx. And cache time also has a label, and then on its page load it has as well exactly the same values, label1.txt equals now.toString. But what's different about this control than our web page is that I added the output cache duration equals 10 directive to our control. So what I'm going to do is take our new control, the cache.time.ascx, I'm going to drag and drop it onto our page. So what we would expect to happen is that since there's no page level caching, our label that belongs to the page should refresh each time that the page is refreshed. However, because page level caching is set on the user control, it should remain the same and pull from cache every 10 seconds. So let's test this. We build our solution, and then I want to change our fragment to the start page, and then select Run. And after just a moment, we see that the initial state of the page is that our user control, and let me pull this over so you can kind of see that we have the user control and the label here represented here within our browser, our test page. And when I hit refresh, notice that the one on the bottom changes every time we do a refresh, but the one on the top will not change until 10 seconds have expired. So fragment caching can be helpful whenever parts of the page are static and parts of the page are dynamic. You can kind of separate it out a little bit. In this last example, I'm going to demonstrate data caching using a file dependency, so that whenever somebody changes an XML file, the cache version of that XML file within memory will actually refresh as well. So it will be able to monitor what changes within that XML file, and when something does, it triggers the caching mechanism to refresh itself. Since some of the pop-up menus are rather large within this example, I'm going to reposition the viewing area so that you can see more of the pop-up menus as they appear. So the first thing that I want to do is open up our file dependency, ASPX, which is just a blank web form. And I'm going to drag and drop a data list onto our design surface. I'm going to right-click the data list, and I'm going to select Edit Template, Item Templates. So what I want to do is drag and drop hyperlink objects into each one of the item templates for the item template and the alternating item template. sometimes this takes 1 or 2 passes because it doesn't quite work the first time. It's hard to get the hyperlink to cooperate. All right, rather than spare you or make you go through the painful process with me, I took a couple of tries and finally got it. There we go. Got it to work twice. Now what I need to do is set the properties on each of our hyperlinks so that they know what values to pull from the XML file. So we're going to data bind actually the text value and the underlying navigation URL for each of the 2 hyperlinks. So what I'm going to do is go to the properties window for the hyperlink. I'm going to select data bindings, and the data bindings dialog pops up. The first one that we're going to set is the text value, and I'm going to select container data item, and then I'm going to select custom. I'm going to type in container.data item, and then in quotes we'll use the name of the field within the XML document. In this case it's link text. And we'll do that actually again. I jumped the gun too soon. For the navigate URL. So we'll do the same thing for the second hyperlink. You might be asking yourself, why do we have 2 hyperlink controls? Well, we'll use the alternating item template to display a different color in the background so that the colors alternate between rows. That's the only reason why we're doing 2 of them right now. So again, we set our container.data item and link text, and then we'll change to navigate URL, select data item, change that to container.data item, and then navigate URL. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to right-click within the data list and select End Template Editing. And when I do, you'll notice that we have now data bound the data list. But I want to format it so it looks nice too. So I'm going to select Auto Format, and I'm going to select one of our formats. I'll select Classic 2 because it does have the offset colors. And you see now that shows up here. One last task that I need to take is to drag and drop a label onto our design surface. This will actually display a message for us. And I'll remove the text. And this label is called LBL time. We'll save that as well. Now the other important thing to note is our XML file. I double-clicked our XML file, and you can see that we have a destination node with link text and navigate URL. So for each one of these destination elements with all of its sub-elements, that we should receive one link within our data list if everything went well. So we're going to save this, and we're going to rebuild our solution. Then we're going to go and select set a start page. And I just want to make one quick note before I leave you with the wrong impression. What I didn't show on camera, so to speak, was the actual code that was involved. Again, I would refer you to the article on 4guysfromrolla.com for more information about this. But this is a Visual Basic version of the bind destinations function that basically creates a new cache object, reads the XML into the cache object, and then also sets a dependency object and initializes it with the destinations.xml file. And so this basically says if destinations.xml file changes in any way, then you need to refresh the cache. So what we're going to do is go ahead and test this. And you'll note that when it comes up that we get this message, data was loaded from the cache at 10:06:59 p.m. And I can continue to just hit refresh, and it's just pulling from the cache. It does not have to actually read the XML file. So you can imagine what an I/O savings that is for the processing of your application. Now what I want to do is minimize our Internet Explorer. I'm not going to shut it down, but just minimize it. And then I'm going to open up the actual XML file and make a change. So here we go. We'll open up destinations.xml, and all I'm going to do is just add a 2 to the end of this line, and hit save. And now we're going to open back our browser and hit refresh once again. And when I do, notice that it triggered the change in the XML file triggered the fact that the caching object needed to go back out, grab the new data from the XML file, and then put that into the cache. So we get this message again that now it has been loaded at basically 10:07:48 p.m. And you can see the change here to our BASQuark entry. So I hope that this video and the article were very helpful for your understanding of how to use caching effectively within your ASP.NET applications. I'd like to thank the guys from 4Guys from Rolla, especially Scott Mitchell, for hosting the article and also giving us an opportunity to show off LearnVisualStudio.net. And we hope that if you have an opportunity to stop by our site that you would. We have at least an hour each week of free videos available, plus an archive of previous weeks of videos available as well. So please stop by. Thanks a lot and have a great day.